Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Sunday Messages. We are doing a PTA episode today. I haven't done one of these in a minute. So I have an advice column to answer. We're going to do some prayers, pull some tarot, and wrap up. So the first thing that I want to mention, if you didn't know, there is a new masterclass that starts on Monday, the 11th. It's called The Fabric of the Universe. It is all things quantum field, energetics, harmonics. It's going to be so much fun. And this is definitely the most technical, energetic class that I've ever held. So if you feel the call, if you feel the ping, if you feel like that is something that you want to take some time for and really dive into the energetics, this is going to really boost your manifestations. So it will be free through the end of the month, but if you want to join me live, go sign up for it. So go to onyxhealing.com/FOU. And the link will be in the description box or the show notes, depending on where you're listening to this. And if you're on my newsletter, the link will be in there this Sunday as well. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into this. The first thing we're going to start with is the prayer for this week. I only have one. So this is an anonymous prayer that I received, and it looks like there's a lot going on. So it's a very long description. So let me make this really, really simple and just kind of create a catch-all for everything that you're dealing with. I am in full agreement for you to remember the truth of abundance, love, and well-being. So I'm in full agreement for you to remember that that is actually the truth in all things. So of course, we have the human side of things, which is going to hold the fears, the struggle, the pain, all of the negative emotions. But the key thing in all of this, whether it be for yourself, your finances, the transitions that you're making, family members, friends that you have in your life, the thing that you want to put front and center in all of these relationships and circumstances is that the positive outcomes, if you will, are what want you and what want other people most. So your natural state of being is abundant. Your natural state of being is full of vitality and well-being. Your natural state of being is loving, and that is also true of other people. And so what is needed in all of this stuff that you have going on is simply a remembrance of that truth. So I'm in full agreement for you to reconnect to this and feel that circulating throughout your body, and also to see this truth in others as well. Full agreement for well-being all around, full agreement for happiness, satisfaction, fulfillment, and experiencing life from a lighthearted space. Full agreement. Okay, so before I get into this advice column is perfect for this month because it revolves around the issue of overconsumption. So I really hope that, one, this is relatable for many of you. And the second piece is I hope that this actually gives you some things, some next steps for you to take that will help you along your way. So for those of you who don't know, I have declared April to be the month where I am really talking about consumption and all of the different things, all of the different ways that it can kind of wreak havoc on your life, and all of the things that actually get shut down, muted, and kind of discombobulated as a result of over-consuming. So the episode that I think I'm going to put out this Sunday, just so you know, I'm actually going to label it Apex, and I'm going to talk about all of the systems that come back online when you're doing a fast. So when you're on a consumption fast, what happens? Because that was one of the most shocking and surprising things that I experienced doing Apex for the very first time when I first started that protocol, and everything that happened as a result. So I'm going to go into a deep dive on what really happened, like the meat and potatoes of it all, the nitty-gritty details. And I also want to let you know there are limited seats in this round of Apex. So if you feel that your life wants a big fat reboot, if you want to do some major energetic spring cleaning, Apex is the way to go. It is by far the most intensive program that I run, and it is a life changer, period. Like, it is a very intense program to walk yourself through, and it will change your life because you're restructuring your whole energetic system within 2 months with me. And this is definitely for you if you are ready to play full out, if you want to go big, if you want the big fat reset button, if you want a really significant deep cleaning in your life, this is the way to go. And I have some exciting modifications that I've made to it. And there's so much good stuff. If you're feeling the call, please apply. And if you have questions, you can contact me directly. You can send me a message on Instagram if you want. You can email hello@onyxhealing.com. Don't be afraid to reach out if you have questions. I would be happy to talk to you about it. But this is absolutely one for the books, and we start on May 1st. So get in while you can. I'm not sure when I'm going to be running it again, but I will be sharing more details soon. And let's go ahead and get into this advice column because it dovetails perfectly with this topic. Okay, so this is an anonymous submission, and this is what it says. Hey, Sydney, I'm looking for some advice and maybe a pep talk. I'm not sure how to keep myself from constantly falling back into the habit of overconsumption, whether it's food, YouTube, TV, social media. Before I deleted it or whatever else, I'll be thinking, this makes me feel like shit. Why am I doing this? I've started sitting down to plan and make goals for the next year for the first time ever, and it makes me feel great because I'm craving more structure. But I know I need to get the consumption under control, and I need a better understanding of how to actually start implementing self-discipline without just trying to bully myself into doing things. Okay, so there are many different angles that are worth exploring with all of this. So let me just throw a few out there, and you're going to want to poke around for yourself if you're struggling with this. But here are a few things to kind of get you started. Now, when you're saying, you're looking at we'll call it numbing behavior, because I would put food, TV, social media, I would put all of that into the category of numbing behavior. So when you're looking at that and you know that it makes you feel bad, the question that I would start with and the question that I would ask is, what do I get out of this? Because if you didn't get anything out of it, you wouldn't do it. There is something that is being gained from numbing, okay? Or going into a social media rabbit hole, or watching an insane amount of YouTube videos, or numbing, something about that, you are getting something out of it. So you might want to identify, what do I get out of this? And when you're able to identify what it is that you're really getting out of that behavior, it can better shape the desire. Like, it can actually help you identify what you want instead. What is the true desire? What is the actual way that you're wanting to feel that you might be trying to trap in the closet? And because you haven't acknowledged how you really desire to feel, when that's not acknowledged, it will start leaking in ways that are really destructive. So the first thing that you want to do is ask yourself, what do you feel when you numb? And is that better than some type of discomfort that you're facing in your everyday life? Okay? Because there is a strategic reason why you want to do those things. Are you hiding from something? Do you get to ignore your problems? Do you feel relief? There is a benefit to the behavior that ultimately is destructive, but in the short term is helping you in some way. So you want to identify, how is this helping you? How is this protecting you? And this overconsumption state that you get into, how is that better than some potential discomfort in your life? My next piece of advice, and this is actually, I would say this is taking like the backdoor approach to what you're describing as a problem. And that is, have you ever tried giving yourself permission to do the thing? Okay, so what would happen if you gave yourself permission to watch as many YouTube videos as you can? Or what if you gave your permission to eat every crumb of food in the house? What happens when you just say okay? Now, this approach may not work. I want to be really, really clear about that. This isn't the approach that everyone necessarily should take. But one of the things that can make it worse, and you alluded to this at the very end when you said, I am trying to implement self-discipline without bullying myself into things. So let's talk about bullying yourself into things. Bullying energy often kicks up a lot of shame. Now, shame is, I would argue that it's probably one of the most sticky feedback loops that you can get yourself into, because it goes a little bit something like this. You're doing something that you don't like that you're doing. Then your inner dialogue has an energy of shame, so you start bullying yourself. Like, let's say you're calling yourself a piece of shit. Well, now you feel bad again, and because you feel bad, you're going to want to do that numbing behavior in order to numb that feeling of shame. So now you go back into the numbing behavior. Then you feel bad about engaging in the numbing behavior, so now you're shaming yourself again, bullying yourself again. Then that leads to the numbing behavior. On and on and on and on. And that feedback loop has to be interrupted. And one of the ways that I disrupt that feedback loop, or I help people to disrupt that feedback loop, is, okay, what happens if you give yourself 100% permission and not make yourself wrong? What happens? This doesn't even mean that you actually do the thing. It's playing with the idea of what happens to your emotional state when you remove the bullying and you remove the wrongness of it. When you take away the judgment, what happens? All of a sudden, it's no longer a threat. Generally speaking, I don't consider numbing behaviors, or sometimes I'll describe them as numbing agents, to be inherently bad. It's more of, where do they exist in your life and what is the function of them in your life? And if your numbing behaviors are sucked into a negative feedback loop of shame, then that's where people start getting in trouble, because the root isn't the overconsumption. The root is the shame. The root is the bullying, the self-judgment, the negative self-talk that is going to drive the behavior even further. That's why it's sticky, because you're trying to escape the negative feelings that are coming from that inner dialogue. It has nothing to do with the behavior itself. It's an inner game experience, an inner dialogue experience that is then driving the behavior. So this is definitely one of those cart before the horse kind of things that you have going on. Because if you approach a shame feedback loop from overcompensating with action, it's kind of like putting lipstick on a pig. Like, you can be in a shame feedback loop and you can try to implement some fancy morning routine, but I guarantee you, when you fall, you're going to fall hard if you don't address the underlying cause, which is the shame, the emotions, and the judgment on the behavior. Now, here's the next piece that I think a lot of people get very confused about when it comes to understanding their own relationship to their masculine energy, which is what you're describing here. When you're saying, I want more self-discipline, what you're saying is I want masculine structure in my energetic composition that is helpful in my movement forward, right? Because you do want a harmonious relationship between the internal feminine and masculine, whatever composition that looks like. So where people get confused is they conflate the internal disciplinarian or the bully with an internal masculine, and I promise you those are not the same. If you're bullying yourself into action, well, now that's a distorted relationship with your masculine. Okay, if you're trying to bite off more than you can chew and then shaming and scolding yourself for not doing it perfectly and not executing it perfectly, that's a distorted masculine. Because a healthy masculine is going to understand what's too much and what's not enough. The internal masculine has a really good foresight for what is needed here. What is the actual right container to set in this context? That's where it really comes in handy. There is no balanced, healthy, internal masculine that is going to scold you and shame you and punish you and bully you. That's not the case. And the internal masculine, when it has that really clear, sharp vision, it is also not going to push you to do too much too soon. Let me reframe something for you, and this might make it easier to identify what you actually want to do. So when you're saying, I want to be more self-disciplined, what do you actually want out of that? Because I can guarantee you, one, it's a feeling state. You want to feel something. You want to feel satisfied. You want to feel nourished. You want to feel vitality. You want to feel all of these different things that you're associating with discipline, okay? Or that sensation of productivity. I've moved forward in some small way today. So you're going to want to unpack what is it that you really want. Then the other piece, in order to cultivate what you're describing as self-discipline, sure, I would describe it more as being attuned to your desires. So you have a desire right now that is going to require some type of masculine energy in order for you to get there. But the trick here is you don't want to do it in a way that overwhelms you. Because let's be honest, doing too much doesn't feel good. Overdoing it does not feel good. Forcing yourself into something just does not feel good. You will be able to effectively inspire yourself to action way, way, way faster than you can punish yourself into action. This is why I continually come back to desires, and I talk about desire a lot, because I show up for things a lot easier when I'm anchored into my desire, when I'm anchored into things that actually feel good, and my desires feel good. So it's safe for me to dwell in my desires, focus on my desires, and then the action piece is something that comes as a natural extension of me being really focused on my desires. I do things not because I'm disciplined. That just doesn't seem to be the right descriptor, because there are a lot of times when I do listen to myself and let myself off the hook for things and listen to the rhythm of my body. That's also a part of it. But we want to soften our perception of what's really going on with the people who are making things happen. Of course, we know people who show up and do the same thing every day, and they're working on this and working on that, and they lead a life that is very structured and organized. And I suppose there is something romantic about that. But for every one of those people, I can guarantee you there's 10 people who do not live that way, yet get just as much done. So I think that we have We have seen too much of the cookie cutter model and not enough of the balanced, harmonious, you get to have both kind of model. And so it's painted a very fucked up picture for people, where now you're comparing yourself to a cookie cutter model, and that might just not be right for you. And all of you really consider that having a rigid routine may not be right for you. What if you can have both? What if you can have a routine and flexibility? What if you can have a routine? What if you can show up for yourself and also have options? One of my favorite ways to play with this when I'm working with clients is, well, what happens if you give yourself a menu? Instead of saying, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to cook breakfast and then I'm going to do an hour-long workout and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that. What if you just said, okay, in the morning, I want to do some type of movement and I'm free to choose what that looks like. And I want to do one thing for mindfulness. Maybe it's journaling, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's breath work, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And you just do two. And they can be 5 minutes. Just start by picking the low-hanging fruit that is very low risk. Chill out and soften your internal dialogue and see how much you make happen. I think so many of you will be shocked by the amount of stuff that you can get done and make happen when you're not being so rigid and forceful. Like try, yes, holding a standard, but do it in a way where you can actually meet it. Do it in a way that feels inviting and inspiring and feels good. I promise you, if something is feeling pressured and overwhelming and exhausting and unattainable, that is a big fat hint. So just don't go there. I would say start much softer, much smaller, much easier on yourself, and then build and grow and develop what you're calling discipline as you go. It is not something that you cram yourself into. I feel that this is something that is built. It's a skill. It's a practiced holding of a standard and stretching yourself a little bit until it does turn into something that is really satisfying, really pleasurable, and really stands the test of time. So, for example, one of the things that I know about myself is I get bored pretty easily. So sticking to the same routine is not something that I'm a super big fan of, but I do have like my anchor points. So I'm the type of person where I have to have a lot of fluidity. I have to have a lot of flexibility. There needs to be a lot of time for me to play with and options for me to give myself. And I need to be able to modify it when I start getting bored to reinvigorate and re-inspire me. So that's something that I actually bake into my regimens, is an understanding that they're going to evolve. Okay, here is the last piece that I want to give you. So the big thing that I notice about people who have a tendency to overconsume habitually is that you don't give yourself enough time to slow down and actually ask yourself what you want. So once again, it's like, sure, Netflix and cookies might be there, but have you actually slowed down enough not to ask, this makes me feel like shit, why am I doing this bad behavior? Because again, that's when you start falling into shame. If you're asking, this is terrible, why do I want it? That question is going to steer you in the direction of your shadow. But if you don't know what you're doing with your shadow, it'll turn into a big fat shame monster. If you don't know how to alchemize it smoothly, it'll take you down a dark path. So instead of asking the negative question that might be a little bit more difficult to answer in the moment, instead ask yourself the easier question, which is, what do you want? How do you want to feel? what would feel really satisfying right now, what would feel really nourishing, what would feel really peaceful, what would bring you more pleasure, what would blah, blah, blah. And see what kind of doors that question opens up for you. So if you give yourself some time in between these things, in between the, let's say, the drive to do the thing and the action taking on doing the thing, you have a lot of wiggle room where you can start playing with what else, what other options can I present myself with? And how do I actually want to feel so that I can line things up that are congruent with that feeling state that I really like? The next piece, just to make sure that this is done in a super conscious way, if you decide that Netflix and cookies is the path, I love cookies, by the way, but if Netflix and cookies is the path, make it a conscious choice. Let it be something where you're declaring to yourself, I am choosing this. I am deciding this for myself. This is an active decision that I'm making. And let it be an empowering choice. If there's anything, if you are going to do the thing, let it be empowering. Let it be conscious. Let it be a decision that you're making at the very least. So those are all of the pieces that I would give you right this moment to support you with all of this. And I hope those help you out. And one last thing that I would mention is definitely listen to the episodes that I have coming up because they apply to this. Particularly when I do an episode on numbing, if this PTA episode resonates with you, then listen to the numbing episode whenever that comes out. All right, let's pull some cards for the week, see what's going on, what you need to know. Okay, we have the Emperor first thing. And then we have the King of Pentacles. And we have the Six of Coins. So the words that are coming up for this reading are ownership, integrity, and responsibility. This is something to play with and just see how it feels. How do you feel when you start looking at your life through the perspective of, I am owning all of this. I'm taking responsibility for all of this. I'm taking responsibility for the energetics. I'm taking responsibility for the way things have come to be. And I feel as though there are a lot of people who really want to reject that because it's a scary proposition to make, right? Like, oh, no. I wouldn't want anything to do with this. However, if you are going to say, I would never want this in a million billion years, and this is something that is happening to me and it's beyond my control, the thing about that happening or that perspective is that it makes it very difficult for you to get a grip on the things that you do want to have power over. So the perspective of taking radical ownership and radical responsibility over the creations in your life, all of them, good, bad, and ugly, the terrifying, the wonderful, the extraordinary, the miracles, like every single thing, is that empowerment breeds empowerment. And if you start saying, I'm in charge of all of this, then it gives you, it really does liberate your creative freedom. If you see things as happening to you, it's just going to feel as though you're going to walk on eggshells because more of that is going to potentially happen. Where what's happening here with the Emperor and the King of Pentacles in particular is that they're not being a doormat or shifting into victim energy because they can't. Because their leadership would be compromised if they were in that energetic holding pattern. So this is about shattering that completely, and what happens when you own it? What happens when you take radical responsibility for it? What happens when you treat all of this like it's energetic? How much more powerful can you feel when you tap into that instead? The expression that's coming up for the Six of Coins is you get what you emit. You receive what you emit. You attract what you emit. So you're going to call things into your orbit as you emit them. Unsurprisingly, this is a perfect setup for Fabric of the Universe, just because it's all about energetic management. So that's really what's your attention is being called to. What are you emitting here? And be mindful of that. And where maybe have you been trading in the victim card for the empowerment card? Because anywhere that you're holding victim energy, or this is happening to me, and we all have this. We all have the victim archetype within us and access to it. So when you're active in that archetype, you cannot hold king energy. You can't hold that sexy divine masculine energy at the same time. So you are making a deal with the devil when you start picking up that victim energy. When that archetype is present in a situation, your empowerment is hiding off in a corner somewhere. A question that would be helpful for you to play with this week is, since I can have whatever I want, or since I have creative power in this situation, ... what next? As a result of that question, or when you're prompting yourself that, what comes next? How do you actually want it to be instead? If you had a magic wand and you had ultimate creative control, start playing in that realm and see how it goes. So that's what I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If someone needs to hear this, send it to them. And all of the links for Apex, Fabric of the Universe will be in the description box or the show notes, wherever you're listening to this. And as always, I love you. I adore you. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. I will see you all during the masterclass if you're going to be there for that, or watch the replays on YouTube. They will be available for you. And as always, if you have any questions about Apex, please reach out, and I will talk to you all so soon. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye. Good one, everybody. Bye-bye. Good one, everybody.